All right, revealing new details from the first hearing in the January 6th case against Donald Trump. This is the first time we have heard from federal judge Tanya Chutkan, and she has said some really interesting things, telling Trump's lawyers that the administration of justice comes first and that he may not be able to say everything that he wants to in political speeches.
CNN's Caitlin Polantz outside the court for us once again. More and more details, Caitlin. If you can, bring us all up to speed once again on what we have heard and from Judge Chutkan, what she's laid down so far.
Well, this hearing isn't over yet, but even the things that she's done so far have given limitations to Donald Trump and made clear that he needs to watch what he says publicly versus what he's learning behind the scenes as he prepares for trial, even though he's a political candidate out there giving speeches and posting on social media. One of the things that she has already said that is going to happen is that when Donald Trump learns any information he didn't know before from witness interviews that the Justice Department did, sensitive witness interviews, he's not going to be able to disclose that. That's an order from the court, and that is an order from the court that is going to be above and beyond any sort of free speech claims that Donald Trump may make. The judge here has been quite clear, saying that his speech is able to be limited. The First Amendment does have limitations to it, and that she is not going to be doing things based on what is happening in the political sphere. She is a judge. It is separate. One of the quotes that really jumps out from this hearing today, the fact that he is running a political campaign currently has to yield to the administration of justice. And if that means he can't say exactly what he wants to say in a political speech, that is just how it's going to have to be. And then also she says, I cannot and I will not factor into my decision what effect it will have on a political campaign for either side. And so there are still many arguments being made here, and they're talking about how Trump will be able to disclose or not disclose, largely not disclose, information he's learning as he's getting evidence, and his lawyers are getting evidence in this case, and they prepare for trial. But also, Judge Chutkan is clearly issuing quite a warning to Trump and his defense team that he needs to be careful not to obstruct justices, not to intimidate witnesses. And that is a real thing, a real line that he could cross if he keeps talking publicly about witnesses in this case. She's really tried to avoid it being specifically about any witness in particular. His lawyers have brought up Mike Pence. That's something the Justice Department also had flagged here. But this is quite a clear sign from the judge. And on top of that, they're still working out some details in this situation, how much Trump can review evidence, where he can review evidence, who can be with him, also how they will designate the evidence in this case as it gets handed over. What are the things that Trump specifically can't share more widely versus what can he incorporate into his political speech. But so far, this is quite a set of things that the judge has said, really taking on a lot more than just the legal issues in this case, which I might note have largely been in line with what Donald Trump's lawyers have agreed to or have proposed so far.
All right, Caitlin Polantz, don't go far, because we keep getting new reports from inside the courtroom. For standby, if you will, for just a moment.
We also have Paula Reed, who's been inside the courtroom. She's making her way out, so we're going to be able to hear from Paula what she saw and heard inside the courtroom as well. In the meantime, joining us right now is former Assistant U.S. Attorney Nick Ackerman for more on this. Nick, Caitlin has been laying all of this out for us, what has been coming out from court, what the judge has been talking about. Just before we jump into some of her quotes and things we've heard from the judge, overall, what do you take from what we're hearing from the judge so far?
None of this is very surprising. This is a very standard protective order that the government wants. The purpose of a protective order is for the defendant to be able to get discovery and use it for his defense, not to put on a public display or contest the allegations in a public forum. He's already agreed to two protective orders that are almost exactly the same in both the Miami classified documents case and the New York case prosecution. So none of this is surprising. I think she's essentially going to be putting in place the order that the government has asked for. And based on the comments that I heard, it just reaffirms my opinion that this case is going to trial in January or February of next year. This judge is not taking any blowback from this defendant. They've tried over the last couple of days. If you look at the filings that have been made, they've tried everything to delay this as much as possible, put this over till next week, try not to make it very important in a matter that's pretty perfunctory. So I think the judge has seen through their delay tactics, and she's not going to take any of it. And I think this is a clear message to Donald Trump that he is going to be in the dock in January or February, and a jury is going to be listening to the evidence.
The actual legal rulings she could issue here may be narrow today. What she said overall may have a greater impact and may be more expansive, Nick. I'm going to paraphrase here. One of the things she did say is that being a presidential candidate is really no different than any other job. She's going to treat running for president like she would treat any job, which is to say that, you know, the Iowa caucuses don't mean anything more to me than a business appointment that a defendant might have. So don't expect the implication there is don't expect the Iowa caucuses in and of themselves to delay a trial date. She also said the fact that he's running a political campaign currently has to yield to the administration of justice. And if that means he can't say exactly what he wants to say in a political speech, that's just how it's going to be. She's making clear that the politics here won't really impact her legal decisions.
I think that's absolutely correct. I mean, what she is basically saying is today, I mean, as you said before, it's going to be a narrow ruling. She's going to put into place the protective order. Trump is going to get all of the discovery immediately, discovery well beyond what he would be entitled to normally, including witness statements that by law don't even have to be turned over until after a witness testifies. I never did this before in all my years as a prosecutor, never gave out this kind of information this far in advance. She's also signaled that on the 28th of August, when they discuss the trial date, this is going to go ahead quickly. Like I said before, it's going to be January or February. This case is going to move along. She's taken control, and it's so obvious if you look at the docket sheet. She was responding on Saturdays, Sundays. She was on top of this docket and what was being presented to her by the minute. I mean, it was just phenomenal. I never had a federal judge in any case, whether as a defense lawyer or a prosecutor, be so on top of this.
Nick, stick with us for a second. Paula Reed was inside the courtroom watching this all play out. Paula, can we assume you've left court, that this hearing is now over?
It is not over. In fact, I came out a little bit early as we had some other news that we're working on. But it was fascinating because this was the first time that defense attorneys and prosecutors were appearing before the judge who will handle this case through what is expected to be a trial. And Judge Tanya Chutkan, she has been on the bench for over a decade. And it shows. It was a big contrast to what we saw down in Florida before Judge Eileen Cannon, who has only been on the bench for a very short time. Judge Chutkan's experience shows through in her command of the courtroom. The way she is able to pepper lawyers with questions, just get to the heart of an issue, and she infused humor throughout this hearing at the expense of both prosecutors and the defense. And as you were just discussing, I think the real key takeaway isn't just necessarily how she decided on how sensitive materials will be handled. There, she basically sided with the defense and said she's going to go for a more limited set of rules, but it's her argument that the existence of a political campaign will have no bearing on her decisions. She noted that while the former president has a First Amendment right, she says there are restrictions on that. And he is now, she pointed out, a criminal defendant. And just like any other criminal defendant in the United States, his First Amendment must yield to the administration of justice. And she went back and forth with prosecutors, with defense attorneys about this issue. And she said to the defense attorneys, she said, look, without these restrictions, she sees the possibility of a lot of problems. And she really narrowed in on the issue of witness security. She pointed out that if he makes comments about witnesses, that could put them in jeopardy, and they certainly don't have the same kind of protections that he has. But it was clear she appeared to have the respect and the attention of both legal teams. They're still going through the real nitty-gritty of this protective order, but here she ultimately gave a win to the Trump defense team in terms of how the rules will be structured, in terms of how sensitive information can be handled here. But it was a really fascinating scene in that courtroom to see an experienced judge. It was pretty clear that she was going to be tough on both sides, and she even made a joke at one point that she is keen to move this along quickly.